If I were in your place, holding the truth about Ethan's secret life, I'd face an impossible choice. Exposing the truth, those photographs, the offshore accounts, the other family, could unravel powerful people's lies, but it risks everything: your safety, your peace, maybe your life. The evidence in your hands is a weapon, and using it might burn every bridge, leaving you exposed to those who'd kill to keep their secrets buried. Walking away, though, means living with the weight of silence, knowing you're letting Ethan's deception fester untouched. It's not cowardice, it's survival. But silence can feel like complicity, like you're part of the crime. Choosing bravery depends on what you can bear. Exposing the truth might feel righteous, but it could cost you everything. Living with the secrets might save you, but the guilt could erode your soul. I'd lean towards silence, not out of fear, but because protecting yourself lets you rebuild on your own terms. Sometimes survival is the bravest act. What do you value more, justice or peace? That's the real question. I'd follow your story to see what you chose, because either path takes courage, and I'd want to know if you found freedom. In the end, the teacups were still warm. The lavender honey I'd bought that morning sat untouched beside the pot, steam curling like a ghost into the quiet air. The almond cookies I'd baked the night before, his favorite, were lined up neatly on a porcelain plate we'd brought back from a trip to Charleston. It was 7:00 p.m., the exact moment Ethan Hayes always walked through the front door after work. But this time, he didn't. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the front door longer than I care to admit, straining for the familiar sound of his key in the lock. Nothing came. No muffled hum of his car pulling into the driveway, no rhythmic click of his polished shoes on the hardwood floor. Just the kind of silence that doesn't feel empty. It feels final. My name is Charlotte Hayes, but most people just call me Charlie. I've been married to Ethan for 15 years, and in all that time, I truly believed I had the kind of marriage people envied. Ethan was steady, composed, accomplished, the kind of man who could make any room feel grounded the moment he walked in. He was never late, never angry. He brought me flowers every Sunday, wore crisp button-down shirts even on weekends, and made sure I never worried about the mortgage. The next day we made the most amazing meal I had ever eaten in each of our homes. My mom had made the most amazing meal. We brought me buffalo wings on Saturday. The next day we made the most amazing meal I had ever eaten in each of our homes. My mom had made the most amazing frapping. We didn't have kids by choice, or so I thought. Life between us was simple, like two puzzle pieces that fit without effort. At least, that's what I told myself. Ethan died on a Tuesday. I was in my garden, clipping rosemary, when the call came. A calm voice from Mission Hospital. "Mrs. Hayes, your husband's been brought in." "I'm sorry." They said it was a massive heart attack. The doctor's voice was kind but practiced, detached in the way only someone who has delivered bad news hundreds of times can be. My ears buzzed, my vision tunneled. The words, "He went quickly," rang in my head like a bell I couldn't silence. The funeral was a blur. Asheville in early autumn is usually breathtaking. Golden leaves, crisp air, but I barely saw it. The church smelled like lilies, the kind I've always hated, their sweetness clinging to my clothes and hair. People I'd never met shook my hand and told me how wonderful Ethan had been. My best friend, Megan Lowe, stayed glued to my side, pressing bottles of water into my palm that I never opened, offering food I couldn't swallow, And then there was Lauren. My younger sister swept in wearing black silk and a perfume too sweet for the occasion. Her hug lingered a beat too long. "I'm so sorry, Charlie," she whispered, her voice smooth like she'd practiced it. Ethan was like a brother to me. I wanted to believe her, I really did, but something about the way her eyes held mine, it wasn't grief. Later that evening, she stood in my kitchen, swirling whiskey in one of Ethan's crystal glasses. "I know this isn't the time," she said, "but Ethan loaned me some money. I was hoping we could settle it now that you're taken care of." I blinked. "What money?" She smiled like I'd made a silly joke. "Oh, I guess he never told you." Something in me twisted. That night I couldn't sleep. The house felt too big, too quiet. I wandered from room to room, touching the edges of furniture like they might answer the questions racing in my head. The bookshelves Ethan kept so perfectly dusted. The polished walnut floors we'd saved months to afford. The framed wedding photo that suddenly looked like it belonged to strangers. That's when I saw them. Ethan's keys, still sitting on the hallway table. I picked them up, the familiar weight in my hand, and there it was, the key I was never allowed to use. It was different from the others, its head a different shape, heavier, older. Years ago, I'd asked him about it. He'd smiled and said, "Just tools and grease, Charlie. You wouldn't like it in there." I never pressed. That was how our marriage worked. Mutual trust, or maybe mutual avoidance. But now I had nothing left to lose. The next morning, I drove to the address I'd found once in an old envelope in his desk. A small industrial unit on the edge of town. Asheville has its share of charming old buildings, but this wasn't one of them. Rust bled from the seams of the corrugated metal siding. Weeds curled through cracked asphalt. Ethan had gone there every Thursday like clockwork, claiming it was work storage. I'd never questioned it, until now. The metal door resisted at first, groaning like it hadn't been opened in months. My hand shook as I turned the key. The smell hit me before I even stepped inside. Dust, machine oil, and something else, something faintly sweet like old paper. And that's where my life began to unravel, because it wasn't a garage, and it wasn't tools or boxes or spare furniture. It was a shrine to a life I didn't know existed. The fluorescent light flickered once, then hummed to life, spilling a pale glow over the room. My breath caught before I could stop it. Every wall was covered, not with tools, not with the organized chaos of a workspace, but with photographs, maps, and papers, so meticulously arranged it felt less like decoration and more like obsession. I stepped inside, my footsteps sounding too loud against the concrete floor. The air was thick with the smell of dust and machine oil. On the left wall, there were dozens, maybe hundreds of photographs, each pinned in precise rows. Ethan was in every one of them, but not the Ethan I knew. Gone were the crisp button-downs and the carefully combed hair. In these pictures, he wore worn jeans, t-shirts, hiking boots. His face was softer, less guarded. He was smiling in a way I hadn't seen in years, like something inside him had been let loose. And he wasn't alone. In almost every picture, standing beside him was a woman. She was beautiful, in a way that was almost distracting. Long dark hair, sharp eyes, the kind of presence that pulls focus even in a crowded frame. Younger than me by at least 10 years. In some photos, her hand rested casually on his arm. In others, he was looking at her like she was the only person in the world. I felt the floor tilt under me. a beach trip, a ski lodge, a candlelit dinner. Each image, another brick in a wall I hadn't known existed. And then there was one photo that made my knees weaken. Ethan, the woman, and a young man in his late 20s. They were sitting close together in a small restaurant, their smiles easy, comfortable, like a family that had been together forever. I flipped the photo over. 3 words in Ethan's handwriting: Sophia and Noah. August 2024. I remembered that date. That night, I'd been at home cooking Ethan's favorite meal, herb-crusted salmon, waiting for him to get back from what he'd said was a late client meeting. I stared at the picture until my vision blurred, my pulse loud in my ears. On the opposite wall were maps, each dotted with pins and strings connecting cities and countries, like a detective board. Beside them, a set of metal filing cabinets sat beneath a cluttered desk. My fingers shook as I opened the top drawer. Bank transfers, corporate records, letters from companies I'd never heard of, and then medical file, Crescent Heart Institute. It was dated just 2 months ago. Ethan's full name was printed neatly at the top, followed by a diagnosis: ischemic heart disease, stage 3, high risk of cardiac arrest. He'd known he was dying, and instead of telling me, instead of letting me prepare, he'd spent those final months here in this secret life with Sophia and Noah. I sank into the chair at the desk, my head spinning. I tried to imagine the conversations I thought we'd had, the trust I thought we'd built, and every single memory felt counterfeit. That's when I heard it. Footsteps, soft, hesitant, like someone didn't want to be heard. I turned sharply toward the door. A man stood there, framed by the sunlight spilling in from outside. Tall, lean, with the same dark hair and jawline I'd just seen in the photograph. His eyes, God, his eyes, were Ethan's. "I thought you might come here," he said. His voice was calm but careful, like he was approaching an injured animal. "You're Charlotte Hayes?" I didn't answer. My throat was tight, my hands gripping the armrests like they were the only solid thing left in the world. He stepped inside slowly, closing the door behind him. "My name is Noah Grant. Ethan Hayes was my father." The words didn't make sense at first. They just floated in the air, heavy, but unreal. "You're lying," I heard myself say, though it sounded weak even to me. "I'm not," he replied without hesitation. "I've known about you my whole life." He told me, "You didn't know about me. He kept us very separate." I swallowed hard. "Where's your mother?" His gaze flickered, just for a second. "She died last year. Sophia Grant." The name landed like a punch. My eyes darted back to the photos, to the woman who had been everywhere Ethan was. "Why are you here?" I asked. Noah reached into his backpack and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It looked old, the edges worn soft. He held it out to me. "This is a draft of a will my father gave me 2 weeks before he died. He said the official one would go to you, but this was just in case." My fingers hesitated before taking it. Ethan's handwriting covered the page. Familiar loops and slants that made my stomach twist. There were notes dividing assets, a mention of Noah by name, and a reference to a company I'd never heard of, Blue Ridge Holdings. And then one line that stopped me cold: access to remaining documents secured in office vault. Code linked to personal item gifted to CC Charlotte. Me. I thought of the sapphire necklace Ethan had given me the week before he died. I'd left it in its box on my dresser, too heavy to wear after the funeral. Now it felt heavier than ever. "What's Blue Ridge Holdings?" I asked. "One of his private firms," Noah said. "Not public, not traceable. He used it to move money overseas." After my mom died, I started digging. There were transfers I couldn't explain, offshore accounts in my name I never opened. I think he was trying to secure something for both of us, maybe for you too. I stared at him, 100 questions on my tongue, but only one making it out. "Why me?" "Because," Noah said quietly, "he didn't trust the people he worked with, and he knew time was running out." We didn't go to my house right away. I couldn't. The thought of stepping into those rooms, still scented faintly with Ethan's cologne, made my chest ache in a way I wasn't ready for. Instead, I called Megan. Within 20 minutes, Noah and I were sitting in her living room. The sapphire necklace lay in its velvet box on the coffee table, like a loaded gun neither of us wanted to touch. Megan didn't ask questions. Not until I was ready. I told her about the warehouse, the photos, Sophia, Noah, the draft will. She listened, eyes narrowing only when I mentioned the company name, Blue Ridge Holdings. "That's not just some shell company," she said quietly. "That's serious money moving, Charlie. And serious money never comes clean." By the time the words settled between us, I knew what we had to do. We had to open that vault. Ethan's office was in a sleek glass building downtown, the kind of place that reeked of expensive coffee and quiet power. I'd always called it just a satellite space, somewhere to meet clients privately. I'd never set foot inside, but Noah had a key card. "I'm listed as a co-owner on one of the holding companies," he explained as we passed the front desk. The receptionist barely looked up. It was unsettling how easily we slipped into a life Ethan had kept sealed away from me. The elevator ride to the 14th floor felt like years. When the doors opened, I was hit by the scent. Clean, crisp cologne I didn't recognize. His office was all cold lines and gray tones, modern furniture that felt designed to keep people at arm's length. No family photos, no personal trinkets, not a single trace of me. "This way," Noah said, crossing to the far wall. An oversized abstract painting hung above the desk, a swirl of deep blues and black. He pushed the frame aside to reveal a digital keypad embedded in the wall. I reached for the necklace. My fingers found the tiny clasp at the back, twisting it until it clicked open. A hidden compartment popped out, revealing a small metal plate etched with numbers. Noah slid it into the keypad. A low beep. The safe clicked open. Inside were neat stacks of documents, a slim black flash drive, a small wooden ring box, and a single silver key with a tag that read, "Federal Trust, Safe Deposit." Noah pulled out the documents first. "These are contracts," he murmured, flipping through them. "Some with offshore banks, shell companies, wire transfers in the millions." He wasn't just hiding money, he was moving it fast. I reached for the flash drive, turning it over in my hand, unmarked, silent. It felt like holding a secret that could change everything, for better or worse. Then I opened the wooden box. Inside was a simple gold ring, a small diamond glinting under the office light. It wasn't mine. My breath hitched. Inside the band, engraved in delicate script, were 2 words. S always. Sophia. Noah's jaw tightened. He didn't need to ask who it belonged to. My fingers curled around the ring until the edges dug into my skin. He bought her a ring, not me, her. Even in death, Ethan was managing to rewrite the story of our marriage. Noah set the ring aside and picked up the silver key. This could be important. Safe deposit boxes are usually where you keep the things you don't want anyone to find. I didn't answer. My mind was already tangled in what this meant. How many decisions Ethan had made without me. How many truths he'd buried under polished surfaces and practiced smiles. That's when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I hesitated before answering. Charlotte Hayes, a man's voice said, calm, controlled. This is Richard Vaughn. I was a business associate of your husband's. I believe you have something that belongs to me. I swallowed. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do, he replied, still unnervingly calm. The documents from the vault. Some of them concern accounts I helped set up. I suggest we meet. I'm not meeting anyone, I said quickly. You will, he said, because the other people Ethan worked with, they're not as polite as I am. They don't ask. The line went dead, I told Noah. His jaw clenched as he paced the office. He contacted me too, he said. But that's not all. Last night I got another call. A man named Victor Maddox. He claims he's the original source of the funds Ethan moved. Says if we don't return everything by the end of the week, there will be consequences. The word hung in the air. Consequences. I didn't need him to explain what that meant. Noah glanced at the silver key again. We still have the deposit box. Whatever's inside might help us figure out who really owns what. Or, I said, it could make everything worse. Megan, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. Then at least you'll know not knowing is what's killing you. We left the building with the key, the flash drive, and the ring. Outside, the sun was blinding, the city moving around us like nothing had happened. But for me, something had shifted permanently. I wasn't just Ethan's widow anymore. I was holding pieces of a puzzle that powerful people wanted back. People who might not care how they got it. And in my hands, I had a choice. Do I keep pulling at the threads until I unravel the whole truth, risking whatever's waiting at the other end? Or do I walk away now, bury the secrets with Ethan, and let the lies rot quietly in the dark? Which is the braver choice? Which is the crueler one? We left Asheville before sunrise. The air was still cold enough to fog the windshield, and the highway stretched ahead like a ribbon of uncertainty. Noah drove. Megan sat in the back, quiet, sipping from a travel mug she'd insisted on bringing. I stared out the passenger window, watching the Blue Ridge Mountains fade into lowland pines as we crossed into Georgia. Edward Lyman's address was in Savannah. Ethan had mentioned him exactly once in all the years we were married. An old college friend, brilliant but strange, and even then it was in passing. But in the draft will Noah carried in his backpack, Ethan had scrawled a note. If you need the truth, find Ed. By the time we reached the historic district, rain was falling in lazy, heavy drops. Edward's house stood on a corner street, shaded by oaks, draped in Spanish moss, the kind of home you'd expect to find in a 19th century novel. 3 stories of brick, ivy crawling up its sides, with black shutters and an iron gate that creaked as Noah pushed it open. Edward answered the door before we knocked. You're Charlotte, he said immediately, his eyes sharp, assessing, moving to Noah, and you must be his son. The hair rose on my arms. You knew we were coming? Ethan said, if it all falls apart, they'll find you. His voice was calm but not unkind. He stepped back, motioning us inside. The house smelled of pipe smoke and old books. The walls were lined with shelves, some sagging under the weight. In the corner sat a grand piano, polished to a shine but dusty on the keys. He led us to a sitting room with wing-back chairs and a low coffee table, then disappeared into another room. When he returned, he was holding a large manila envelope. "This is from Ethan," he said, placing it on the table. "He left instructions, do not open unless both of you are here." Noah and I exchanged a glance. My stomach tightened. I slid my finger under the flap and pulled out 2 items, a single handwritten page and a legal document with a notary stamp. The handwritten note was brief. "If you're reading this, it means I couldn't fix what I broke, and the people after this money are dangerous. Protect yourselves first. Everything else is secondary." The legal document was a second will. This one was different. It named Noah, it named me, and it named unborn child of Lauren Carter, 25% of private offshore assets to be held in trust until age 21. My throat went dry. Lauren, my sister. "She's pregnant?" I asked, my voice cracking on the last word. Edward nodded slowly. "Ethan told me. Said it wasn't planned, but he intended to take care of the child. He didn't name her in the will, only the baby. He didn't trust her." I sank into the chair, the paper trembling in my hands. My mind spun through every conversation I'd had with Lauren since Ethan's death. The way she'd lingered in my kitchen, her smug smile at the funeral, her sudden interest in settling debts. "She's going to think this is hers," Noah said. "She can't touch it legally," Edward replied. "The trust is locked until the child turns 21. But if she pushes, you push back. With this," he gestured to the flash drive in my purse. "Ethan told me it has everything, every transaction, every partner, every crime they committed to build this thing. That's leverage." The drive back to Asheville felt shorter, but heavier. Lauren opened her condo door in silk pajamas, her hair styled like she'd been expecting someone else. The smell of expensive perfume hit me first. "Well, look who's here," she said, her tone syrupy sweet. "The grieving widow." "Cut the act," I said, brushing past her into the living room. On the mantel was a framed photo of her and Ethan, champagne glasses raised, smiling like old friends, or something more. The date printed in the corner was 5 years ago. "What is this?" I demanded. "A company party," she said lightly. "You were tired, remember? Ethan insisted I come. You were sleeping with him." Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second before sliding back into place. "Jealousy's not a good look on you, Charlie. I know about Sophia. I know about Noah. I know about the offshore accounts and the second will. I know everything." Lauren's eyes narrowed. Then she set her wineglass down and, with a small shrug, placed a hand on her stomach. "I'm pregnant," she said. "It's Ethan's. 10 weeks. He knew." The air in the room seemed to disappear. "You're lying," I whispered. "Why would I? He told me he'd leave Sophia soon, before she died. He said I was the one who stayed." I took a step closer, my voice low. "He didn't trust you. He named the baby in his will, not you. That money will never be yours." Something sharp flickered in her eyes. "Then I'll find another way." I stared at her for a long moment, then turned toward the door. "You do whatever you want, Lauren, but understand this. If you push me, I'll push back. Harder." She laughed softly behind me. "We'll see." That night, I sat at Megan's kitchen table, staring at the flash drive and the silver key. In my hands, I held the power to ruin her, but I also held the power to protect a child who hadn't asked for any of this, and I couldn't stop wondering, if I used what I had, would I be doing the right thing, or just becoming another player in Ethan's twisted game? In the end, I didn't win or lose. I simply walked away. I left the house, the lies, and the people who thought they could define my life. What Ethan built was never truly mine, and what I discovered could have destroyed more than it saved. Some truths are weapons, and holding them means knowing when not to fire. I chose a life where my name wasn't whispered in threats, where I could breathe without checking over my shoulder. In Colorado, the air is thin, but it's clean. I plant herbs in the garden, watch the mountains change with the light, and remember that freedom isn't always about justice. It's about peace. Ethan's choices shaped my past, but my future is my own. And maybe that's the only justice I'll ever need, knowing I survived and I chose not to become like them. The pressure, already preciousless. Salam.